Hi, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live webinar with our friends at Microsoft. The black box era of retail merchandising is officially over, is our subject. We are so excited to extend our webinar series and bring in our partner from Microsoft to talk about merchandising in the agentic era. And with that, we'll get started. I'd like to first introduce myself, and then we'll hand it off to Noah and Kimberly. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Fish. I'm the co-CEO of Intelo. I lead our business end of Intelo.ai, so all things go-to-market, customer success, customer support, and very happy to have Kimberly and Noah as part of this panel today. And I'm really going to be the facilitator. I'd say Kimberly and Noah are the stars of the show because they've got long history in merchandising and planning.
Great. I'll go next, Jeff. Thank you very much. I'm Noah Hirschman. I'm the head of merchandising strategy for Intelo. And as Jeff said, I have a very long history as a retail merchant, mostly in hard lines at Amazon and eBay, at Staples, at a bunch of different online and offline retailers. And I feel the merchandiser's pain, and hopefully we have some solutions to can help absolve that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly McKinley. I'm an industry advisor in retail and consumer goods at Microsoft. And similar to Noah, come from industry, but on the softline side. So started my career, in the buying organization at Bloomingdale's. Have worked at and with several, global luxury goods companies as well. And really excited to be here today. Again, feel the pain of a lot of merchandisers and planners, and am really excited about what technology can bring to that role these days. So thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly, and we're so happy to have you. Let's talk a little bit about what we'll cover today. Noah's going to take us through the black box problem, so the history of merchandising and planning in the world of spreadsheets and legacy systems. We're going to go through some Intelo agents in action, and really we'll cover kind of 3 use cases, and we'll have a discussion around that, around merchandising financial planning, rebalancing, and lost sales. 3 areas that I think have been pain points for many, many years, no matter what systems you have. Then we'll hand it off to Kimberly to talk a little bit about our partnership and the capabilities of Azure, and why really Intelo is so excited and so happy to be partnering with Microsoft to deploy all of our products within the Azure environment. Then we'll talk about what kind of the partnership means for you, and then we'll have an open Q&A. For those that are on the call, please feel free to ask questions in the comments, and we will answer them at the end, and then we can open it up to an open discussion. With that, I will hand it off to my friend Noah to take it away.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Look, I'm going to just recap what is merchandising, because I think sometimes it can be a little bit of a nebulous topic, but the truth is that, and I'm going to be biased when I say this, merchandising and the merchant is really the hub of the wheel of retail. It's what makes everything happen, because it's really about the product, and it takes a great deal of sort of creativity on one side of the brain and analytics on the other side of the brain, and really to choose the assortment and figure out what the price is going to be and where it's going to go. And it really needs to work with all of the different divisions, including marketing and supply chain and in-store operations and training and planograms and all that other great stuff. But the truth is that merchandising has sort of the lowest, last generation software. I mean, the truth is that there is a lot of great CRM software out there. There's a lot of great supply chain sort of software out there, and all sorts of other things for in-store execution. But the merchants are still a lot of times using spreadsheets that are being manually formatted. They need to be able to pull data. They're like the human glue. They pull the data from this system, and then from that system, and from the other system, and try to have to move it together. For them to do any kind of what-if scenarios, in other words, any kind of thing that says, okay, wait a second, maybe this particular style is not going to be as hot as last year. I need to adjust it a few basis points, or I need to get more margin out of this category. That could take hours for them to do that in a manual way. And by the time that they've done all of this scenario planning, it's obsolete, because things have changed, and things are, especially in this day and age, moving so fast that it's really unfortunate. And so this kind of planning, after doing it for a long time, they figure out how to do it, but then it's stuck inside their head. And once a merchandiser leaves or gets promoted or moves somewhere else, a lot of the stuff that they've developed vanishes with them. So it's not really a very good kind of baseline where we're coming from. And the truth is that there's a lot of burnout, especially lately in the merchandising department. Next slide, Jeff. So there's sort of this funny choice, we call it false choice, where on one hand, you have manual spreadsheets. You understand what the logic is because you're doing it yourself. You're the human in the loop, but you're the only thing. There is no other thing that's working with you. And so, it really is a very kind of manual process. Now, we're not the first AI company to come along. In fact, machine learning, ML, has been inside of retail and other systems for a long time. But the problem with machine learning is that it doesn't have a kind of a human reasoning. It's really based on, mathematical accuracy, but you don't really know kind of, how it's working, why it's suggesting the things that it's doing. It doesn't make you better as a merchandiser because it just suggests something in a black box, and it could be wrong, and you don't really know why because it's really not transparent. So there's a trust gap. It's because AI said so, you're going to trust it, really? Or are you, going to be a little bit, worried about what the outcome is? And it's really, is it empowering you? Is it replacing you? It's sort of hard to say what these black box algorithms are doing as they stand today. Next slide. So we've got a third way, and we call it collaborative agentic intelligence. And so the difference is that it really works side by side. It's like your trusty super math geeky sidekick, and as you are the person who's the boss, right? And you are able to kind of set the strategy, and you're able to decide whether or not you're going to go with what the agent tells you to do, or whether you're going to, ask them to do it again. It will show you the next best action. But as opposed to the old black box machine learning, it shows the full reasoning of how it got to where it does. And the truth is that it not only does it become better as you start to give it cues and tell it to do things in a different way, it will learn those decisions and will become better every single time it gives you a different output, but also it makes you better because you as a merchant are going to understand the reasoning behind this advanced machine learning or AI engine, this large language model engine. And then it's going to make you say, okay, now I kind of understand what's working and what's not working in a much kind of more advanced way. And so this is how the human and the AI agent or a team of agents work side by side to produce a kind of 1 + 1 = 3 result.
And I'll chime in here and say this is what we always, what we say at Microsoft, it's the human in the loop, right? So we can certainly never replace that great blend of art and science that the merchants bring to this role. But what we want to do is, one of my favorite things that we say is kind of like automate what you can't stand. We've got all these repetitive tasks that we do, whether it's every Monday or whatever it is. And now with these agents, we can automate some of that, but still have that human in the loop for the continuous learning and make sure that the actions that are being recommended, make the most sense for that time.
Exactly. Okay, next. So what we want to do, this is the kind of the whole purpose of this LinkedIn Live session, is to open the black box to say, okay, look, how are we going to be able to understand how this works? I mean, it is really a very interesting new turn of events, from going from this kind of blind black box ML algorithm to something that's going to show you completely transparent reasoning and will also work with you if you don't find that reasoning particularly palpable. it will override. You can override the decision, and every time you do that, and say, you know what, thanks for that. I think that maybe if you added this, or took this into consideration, changed the margin here, did these different things, it will learn from you, and the algorithm kind of continuously improves over time, right? And so now, if it recommends something, and then later on, and we'll go through sort of some of these agents and the lost sales analysis agent, it says, you lost a sale because you ran out of stock. You can go back and say, what happened? How did this algorithm, not get this right? And then it will change it and adjust it so that it gets it right the next time, which is really a very interesting thing. It's sort of this, this assistant that does it, as Kimberly just said, sort of the stuff that you don't want to do, that you want to automate. It does it very, very well. And not only does it do it very, very well today, it only does it better over time, continuously, till it gets extremely accurate. Next slide. So really what we're talking about with agentic AI, and the most important thing is this transparency, which we talked about before, right? Which, there's reasoning behind every decision, and you can just go in and ask it, what's the reasoning? Why did you say you're going to do this? And it will, in plain language, do that, right? Everything is a collaborative process. It accepts, adjusts, overrides. Everything becomes a signal, and that makes the algorithm better in the future. And the truth is that this is not like something where there's a typical software rollout, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more depth. But the truth is that this is not a sandbox. This is an enterprise grade system, and we don't need to do a lot of kind of playing around with it. It's already something that's been deployed in a number of times. It's has a certain level of accuracy and quality, and it just can kind of out of the box with it only in a few weeks, suck in all the data, and be ready for prime time. Next. So it's I like to say that there's this expression, born in the cloud. I think Intelo is born in the merchandising scenario. It's really, there's companies that come in and say, we do this, we do that, and we also do merchandising. That's not us, right? We are an agent that's or series of agents that's dedicated to merchandising and merchandising planning. That's our background, as the people who are working in the company, and that's really how we're kind of looking at things, right? And so it's really sort of a merchandise native solution, and it is tailored to the specific business model and business peccadillos of each individual retailer that we deploy it with, right? It learns your institutional knowledge. It understands, your particular judgment, your brand, what makes things, supportive of that brand. And it's something that once it's implemented and you use it and it learns all of these things over time, it's really something that your competitors can't copy. The data, the flywheel, everything is your own data, right? And so it really becomes something that's kind of bolted to your brand and to how you use it, and it makes it even more powerful. And we've already, deployed it with a number of retailers, including Balenciaga, Versace, Dolce & Gabbana, and others. Next. So, we're looking at this retail, and we've got about 20 agents now, and we're deploying new agents that cover different aspects of retail, almost every single month. So we're really moving through a lot of things. Right now, our focus and core is in the apparel business and in luxury retail, although we're moving into specialty. And we really are covering all of the major pain points or parts of the pillars of the planning life cycle for those particular retailers. So, the first one is business planning, and that's really at the CFO and finance CEO level, where the merchandising department has to come up with the merchandise financial plan and works with the CFO to say, okay, based on how many stores are we opening, how many stores are we closing, what's going on with e-commerce, what's going on with trends, macroeconomic trends, all these kinds of things. We kind of have to come up with a top line, a bottom line, a margin plan, and a inventory turnover plan. And then that's really the first thing that our software does that's extremely good. And we have a number of agent teams that work on that, and actually will disperse that through the agent-to-agent protocol to other agent teams. And then after that, we have this merchandise financial plan at the next level down, which is really done within the merchandising department. That's really around category and subcategory levels, right? So we've got the big picture, what's our company going to do next year? Then we've got, what's going to happen with each division, women's, men's, shoes, all these kinds of things. And then the third phase of the planning is the assortment planning. So what is the actual SKU makeup? What are the sizes? What are the colors that need to roll up to these larger financial plans? This is all done within our agents. And, this would take, and used to take me when I did this at Amazon, would take me months to be able to kind of roll this all the way up, tops down, bottom up. It does this really in minutes. Of course, it needs to be looked at by the human who's using it. So it's going to take a little bit longer, but the actual plans are created basically in seconds. And then once you're in season and you need to worry about where is the inventory and where are we losing sales in what stores because we're out of stock and what needs to be rebalanced to another store, the agent teams are doing that as well. So it's really coming from, it's like a funnel. It's coming from the big picture, CFO level, all the way down to each SKU, each size, each color, and each individual store.
No, I'll just add in, a lot of what I'm seeing in the market is this a very almost like a hyper focus, I'd call it, on assortment planning. Just if we were to compose this process, that piece of everything seems to really be the focal point right now, and across a lot of customers, hard lines, soft lines, luxury, et cetera. It's just really interesting. There's, so I think, being able to, bring some sort of not just automation, but, having the ability to converse and, use an agent to help with this process, can really, especially, when then everybody, once you think you have your assortment done, right, then you have to get it approved, by all the layers of management, and probably someone who, probably an executive that used to be a buyer themselves. And so everybody's got an opinion. So to be able to just make quick changes, once you've put that original assortment together is really a great unlock for merchants.
Yeah, and it's so hard to do it with the standard tools today because
Exactly.
everything needs to be done manually. I just wanted to punch myself in the head half the time, halfway through it, to do it. And then you end up doing it wrong, and you're like, oh no, I forgot this SKU, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
pretty so.
Kimberly, that's a perfect segue into some use cases that we confront with our customers that are live on Intelo today. And before I get into this, Noah said something very interesting. There was a term that's been around for a long time, being born in the cloud. And there's lots of SaaS vendors and software vendors that have said that for many years, since the cloud launched many years ago. We are not born in the cloud. We are born in the age of agents. So agent architecture is very new. Post 2023 is really the only time an organization could say that they were born within an agentic architecture. And thanks to our friends at Microsoft, giving us those building blocks to deploy an agent-only architecture, top to bottom in the stack. We are born in the age of agents. So we are post-cloud, although it's still in the cloud, and we are born in the world of agentic architecture. And I think that really separates us from many of the other systems that exist today. There are many systems that were born pre-cloud that exist in the cloud and are layering agents on top of their legacy software. And we are a totally different animal. So we are an agent-only platform that allows us to move at the speeds that Noah was talking about. So let's jump into MFP, which, if you're on the live watching this now or watching it later, and you work within building your OTB or building your MFP with your teams, with your finance team and your internal merchandising, planning, and buying teams, that this is a long process. This is a long process no matter what system you have. And Noah and Kimberly were just talking about how things are disconnected. I sit in on sessions where we've got customers that have spreadsheets that have 700 rows that are and set 700 pages that are built for their MFP, and then they connect that to their assortment planning spreadsheets, and then they connect that to their in-season optimization spreadsheets. And there's not a single point of failure. There's literally hundreds of points of failure because someone goes in your spreadsheet and erases a VLOOKUP or breaks one of your calculations, and then you have to start over or revert back. And with an agentic capability tool like ours, all of these are connected. We use agent-to-agent protocol, which allows our agents to talk to each other. So our MFP will talk to our assortment planning agents, which will talk to our in-season optimization agents, and eventually our pricing agents as we deploy them as well. But when we think about building this MFP, and you want to do it at the line level, you want to do it at the category level, you want to do it at your business level. Kimberly was at LVMH, where there's all of these different maisons, and each maison has to build their own MFP, and then they go bring it down to the regional level, and then they bring it down even to the line level. And in some cases, just building a line level MFP could take 2 weeks. What you see on the slide here is one that is building around kind of just women's tops, and kind of what do you do around that? And that scenario could take 3 days. Historically, it might be taking some of the people on this LinkedIn Live 3 days. We can build them in literally minutes. And Noah was mentioning the speed that we can deliver. And if speed were it, then I'd say, yeah, that's good. That's a box checker. That's great to be able to move fast. But it's not just about moving fast, right? When we're helping our customers build their MFP or their OTB or do their scenario planning, it's about engaging with the agents the same way you engage with your teams. So we talk a lot about this is merchant AI. This is like adding intelligence to your team on day one, and then that intelligence and capability just gets better and better and smarter past that day one. The worst our agents will ever be are the day that you turn them on, and at that level they're graduate level. By a week later they're about PhD level, and they just continue to get smarter because they're working with your data and they're engaging with your interactions. And that happens either in our dashboards or, more importantly, in our conversations, where you're literally questioning your merchandising financial plan. You're doing bottoms up, you're doing top down, and you're updating capabilities that affect everything else, and then that flow into the next step in the process. So flow into building your seed plan, flow into building your overall assortment plan or your store clustering. These are all connected systems, so that allows you to have a single set of data set that flows through all of the interactions you're having with our agents. I don't know, Kimberly or Noah, is there anything else you wanted to add to capabilities of MFP?
No, I mean, it says here 40 minutes time to decision. Well, only takes a few seconds to actually build the thing behind the scenes, but then you as the human has to go through it and make sure it's all right, which is why it takes as long as it does, right?
Thanks, Noah. Going on to the next one. I know this is one that Kimberly and I have spoken about in the past. We talk to a lot of luxury customers. As Noah mentioned, we have a pretty deep understanding of the luxury space. We've got luxury experts on our team. We also have a very deep understanding of the specialty retail space, and we've expanded there significantly. But the luxury space rebalancing is one that, whether we're talking to teams in Paris or Milan or New York or anywhere in the world, this seems to be a unique challenge for the luxury space. How do you get that $3,000 dress from the New York store to the LA store, and should it go, right? How do you get that $2,000 bag from Paris to the south of France because it's getting into the warmer seasons, and should that bag move, right? And historically, this has been a laborious process. There's generally being done in spreadsheets. The systems that are in place just really can't handle this, can't handle scale, doesn't factor in things like weather patterns, doesn't factor in things like events. We've got coming up here in the US, World Cup coming up, and our rebalancing agents are factoring in where in North America those events are going to happen, and will immediately reforecast for those stores that will need more inventory. And that happens across all events around the world where our customers sit. Thinking in things like geopolitical events, price of oil, and how that affects certain stores, footfall around various malls and how that affects certain stores. So all of those factor into our rebalancing capabilities. And then also you can still engage with it. You can question it. You can change the constraints, and you can ask questions of it and reason with it. But I think I'd love to hear from Kimberly about some of the challenges that you faced in the past when you were in retail.
Sure. I mean, this is a use case that's very near and dear to my heart because I was directly involved in it during my time in luxury. And so, I was a planner, and so the buying team, would spend time, I think my recollection is running a script in Python, and then that would feed into a worksheet where, then they'd manually play around with it. And really the logic there was just to move seasonal inventory, mostly bags and leather goods, from, the smaller doors to the larger ones, under the assumption that because it's a larger door in a bigger city, maybe they'll have more luck with the sell-through to increase the sell-through percent before everything gets pulled back at the end of the season. And so, the merchants would hand it to the buyers would hand it to the planners. And then, then my team was in charge of, communicating to all of the stores, all of the operations managers, what they had to pull and who they had to ship it to. And, so that whole thing that I just described is all very manual, would take a couple of days. And then you've got to give the stores a window of time in which to ship. And then you've got to follow up to check the compliance at the end. So that all in is, 2 weeks or so. And then there'd probably be another rebalance, way towards the end of the season to just push everything into the, the top doors. So, the ability to do this so quickly is really a game changer because it, all of these things, if you think about it, it really frees up the merchant's time, the planner's time, anybody who's involved in all of this to really run your business and focus on the art side, which cannot be, replicated or automated through technology. So this particular use case, like I said, very near and dear. I think we've all probably gone through it in some way, shape, or form. But, just one thing to kind of consider as we move forward is, think about, what you could do with all of, the extra time that you might have. What would you feel like you were more on top of in all of that as we move through these use cases?
Thank you, Kimberly. We talk to planners and allocators a lot, and whether it's rebalancing or replenishment, we hear all the time, oh my God, imagine if I didn't have to just do analysis on Sunday night after the stores closed on Sunday night to get ready for Monday. And then I think, Kimberly, exactly to what you said, taking 2 or 3 days. With our in-season optimization team or the agents that exist around in-season optimization, you don't have to spend your Sunday nights crunching numbers. You can just show up on Monday morning and have everything ready to go. And with the human in the loop, you can review it, you can reason with it, you can question it, and you can then execute against it. And Kimberly speaks a lot about the art versus the science, and that's a big piece of how we created the personas of our agents. So we've tried to build within our personas of our agents the understanding of an organization through data. But as everyone knows, AI can only go so far. So we're really good at pattern recognition. We're really good at crunching massive amounts of numbers. We're really good at bringing in other elements of data that the team's not looking at through their systems. But that art's always going to be there. And in whether it's luxury, specialty, big box, there is absolutely an art into merchandising and planning. And something that I hear a lot when I talk to chief merchants is that their teams didn't go to school to be Excel specialists. That's not why they went to school to go into merchandising and planning and buying. They really went to strategize around a brand and to help that brand be more successful with increased sell-through, increased margins, and ultimately better top line and better outcomes for their business. And if we can take the science and the math away from the data crunching of what are incredible individuals that understand their business, we can layer back in all of the strategy they went to school for in the first place and why they went into this industry. So thank you, Kimberly. Thank you for calling that out. The last one we're gonna talk about in use case is lost sales. This is one that it is kind of at the root of what we do. So if we think about all of the agent teams that we deploy, whether it's from MFP to in-season to assortment to pricing, they all have to be rooted in data, right? And there's two key areas that we have to look at to kind of ground us so that we can build out the assortment plan, whether it's your seed plan or thinking about store clustering or in-season optimization. And that's really around looking back to our lost sales analysis and then pushing forward to our demand plan. And these are areas that have been almost forgotten about across systems that have been around a long time. And teams just kind of rely on, okay, I've got this demand plan. I'm looking at my last 4 weeks or 8 weeks worth of sell-through, and that's what's driving me forward. And that's really at the end of the season or at the end of the year, I'll look at all of my data and then I'll build my plan for the following year. The way that we look at lost sales analysis is continuous, right? We've got continuous review of all of the data that we're bringing in for our customers. And historically, that's historical sales data, that's the inventory movement, and then that's building a process going forward. So our lost sales analysis is always running in the background, and it's really a linchpin on what we do. And if you layer in a lost sales analysis agents into your capability, you can pinpoint kind of what went right, what went wrong. How do I think better for the next season? How do I plan better for the next month, the next week, and then the next couple of years when we think about our long range planning? So this is a key element for us. I don't know, maybe Kimberly or Noah, you both in merchandising and planning and buying in the past. Was lost sales analysis kind of a forgotten thought within your teams?
Oh, for sure. I looked at this and I thought, gosh, I don't think in any of my time when I was, in the business side, like that we ever did this, because once it happens, it happened, and you're just kind of reporting on it, but then you're moving on because you're already focused on what you're doing next, or you're executing in season. And so really, I thought about this, over the past day or so, and I really can't recall a time because it just would have been so manual and so time consuming that, any merchandising team that I was ever on that we reflected, if you will.
Well, we would go into it like this far, which is, yeah, we ran out of stock. We got to order more next time. That's just so general. It's like, because the truth is you didn't necessarily run out of stock. You ran out of stock in some stores and not in other stores, right? And many other reasons, pricing and all this other stuff that goes into lost sales. And so a lot of times, you're right. Retail is about, what's next, what's exciting about it, but learning from the past, and even better, as what Jeff said earlier, having the agent-to-agent protocol, where this can actually drive the thinkings, as it were, and the output of other agents in the future, I think is really key.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks, Kimberly. And I think this is one of those areas that, as we dig deeper with our customers, they have that aha moment, kind of like when Kimberly just said you weren't doing it. So happy to discuss this with anyone that's on the call, and feel free to comment on the LinkedIn Live, and we can talk about it at the end. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Kimberly to talk about Azure and our great partnership with Microsoft.
Sure. So, so what does that mean, for our customers, when Intelo and Microsoft partner? So, Intelo is built on Azure. So what you're going to get is a native Azure architecture. Okay. So all of these agents from Intelo run on Azure. They're not ported in. Okay. So they're co-engineered against, Microsoft's reference security and our compliance standards. So you're gonna kind of hear that security thread throughout when I'm speaking, because it's just so important, always, but also particularly in this day and age. So Intelo is a validated partner of ours, and they're Mac eligible. So if you have a Mac, a Microsoft Azure consumption commitment with Microsoft, you're using Intelo, you can use Intelo against your Mac. Okay. And you can also transact through our marketplace. A little more on that in a bit. This last point here, I'll spend a little more time in. Just want to again hit home that with this integration, you're going to get Microsoft Entra ID, that integration to Teams, and just the broader everything Microsoft, all of our platform. M365, if you have the co-pilots in place, all of that. And so, just to give an example of something, that assuming you have those capabilities from Microsoft already, if you're using Intelo, let's say you're doing that rebalancing, that particular use case that we talked about. In Intelo, the agents return that these stores, your store needs to transfer to, this store. With being on the Microsoft platform, then we could likely set it up that those emails then are automatically written. So you're going to have like the ability to just extend all of the capabilities here as well. The procurement path will be short, because you can run it through the procurement path with Microsoft, assuming that's already set up, and you won't have to set up another procurement path. And then the security review will be familiar. So again, you're going to get, all of the security that comes with, being built on, the Azure platform.
One thing I'd add, Kimberly, is that Intelo is fully deployed within Microsoft Teams. So while yes, you can log into Intelo and access any of our agents, you can also interact with any of our agents through Teams as well. Perfect.
Okay. I won't spend too much time on the technical portion here, but just want to, again, say that the, Azure here is kind of the backbone that makes this real-time agentic, all of this agentic retail possible. So again, think of it like, conversational merchandising is what I call it. Not only is can you do everything in real time and get these, these real-time insights, you can action and analyze in real time as well. And so, just again, I'm going to start at the bottom. You're going to have, the enterprise controls. So managed Entra IDs, identity and role-based access. So that's really important. So, everyone will have, those that do have access will have, access and identity based on their role. So they can be different. Really important here is, private networking. Everything's managed, and the data residency is controlled by you, the customer. Okay. Then we have our intelligence layer. So important to kind of point out, this isn't like another solution that like you have to port into. We're just adding an intelligence layer here. And so that's going to run in Azure. Okay. And then on top of that is the compute layer. Okay. All right. We can move ahead. All right. And then again, just to, for those, just to further kind of hit home what the partnership means, for the IT teams and procurement, you can do the procurement through the Azure Marketplace. And this is something that your team should already know, assuming most are Microsoft customers already. And then the security and identity. Again, the entire review of this, going in will be aligned to Microsoft baselines. And then again, when I just hit home, it's going to remain your data in your residency under your controls.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Yeah.
We're going to switch to Q&A now. We had some questions that came through prior to the event that we will answer first. And then if there's any additional questions in the comments, please go ahead and comment, and then we can answer them as well. So why don't I answer the first one, and we can talk about it. So question number one was, what does implementation look like for a multi-brand, multi-country retailer? I think that speaks to where Kimberly was in the past. We have several. Generally, each brand will have its own tenant, right? Within Intelo, we are a multi-tenant agents as a service subscription model. So we can deploy each tenant within weeks. Our standard kind of implementation time is anywhere from 3 to 12 weeks, depending on the customer. You can then deploy that depending on the data set. So if it's a single data set globally, so let's say if you're a Maison that's based in Paris and you've got all of your data sitting in Microsoft or any other data lakehouse architecture, and it's standardized across all regions, it would be one data set, one tenant by Maison. If you've got multiple data sets, we would deploy that agent by that data set. So you might have your data separated for North America, for APAC, and for EMEA. We can do it that way, and that's a pretty common model for us as well. But generally, we can have you up and running in less than 6 weeks. We've gotten as fast as 3. Our kind of average is 4 to 10. So that's where we come in on our deployments. And customer by customer basis, first thing we would do is understand currently your current state. Next one.
I can answer the next one if you
Go
want.
ahead, Noah, please.
Yeah, so we've got an attribution agent where we really understand what are the attributes of a particular product or product category or SKU, and then we're able to kind of match that with the current assortment. So we have this thing called a newness forecasting agent, and really what it does is it looks at attributes that have a similar thing to a current SKU, even if that previous SKU has been discontinued, and it can look at that sales history and automatically import it, and then overlay it on top of the new SKU and use that with any kind of other things, if there's a price change or any other kind of thing that might change a little bit from the old SKU attributes, but it uses that and takes that into consideration, and then it forecasts the future of the new SKU. So that's through attribution and data attributes. Anything you want to add to that, Jeff?
No, I think we're good on that one. Let's go to the next one. This is really important. Data is really important. Our agents are really smart right out of the gate. They've been trained with personas to act like an in-season agent team, an assortment agent team, a core planning or MFP agent team, soon to be pricing and optimization agent team. But they do have to be rooted in your data, right? So what we're looking for is a minimum of 2 years sales history. If you have it, if you don't, we'll take what you have. If you're a new business, we're working with a customer that is rapidly opening stores, but up until about a year ago, they only had D2C. So the store data just isn't that much. We'll take what you have, right? As I mentioned earlier, the agents, the day that we turn them on, the day that we give you access, are the worst they'll ever be. The more data that we feed into it, so we will we must have integrations with your sales history data and your inventory data. That can be through your legacy system. It can be through your lakehouse architecture. It could be a flat file. It could be an Excel upload, but we do need that data. So the more data that the agent gets, the smarter it gets about your business. So that's kind of, I think that hopefully that answers your question. No, I don't know if you have anything else out there.
No, it's an interesting thing to see. The human intelligence curve kind of plateaus. I think I'm past the plateau, by the way. But the AI algorithm just goes up incrementally, and I don't think that we understand what that's going to be like even in a year, 2 or 3 years from now, how smart it's going to be. It's really going to be interesting to see. It's a funny new world,
Well, we're targeting PhD level within months, so that's kind of where we are.
What happens after that?
Get to super intelligence. We'll move on from there. The next one's really important, and I think this speaks specifically to kind of what Kimberly was talking about: security and data architecture, and why we partnered with Microsoft. Governance is really important. So part of what we do is we need to take a look at your data If it's very much standardized, we do those implementations right in-house with Intelo. If not, we have partners both in North America and Europe that can help around understanding what the current state is of your business. How does one brand manage their MFP versus another? How does one brand handle assortment planning versus another? There are lots of differences. Every business is different. If we think about that multinational, multi-brand question, even within a holding company, one brand might run their business from a merchandising and planning perspective totally different than the other. And we are not looking to revolutionize your merchandising and planning team. What we're looking to do is transform it, right? So move it away from a lot of manual processes, a lot of look back as compared to look forward, and optimize and then increase. So how we do that is we got to look at your current state first, and then we apply configurations of our agents to your current state, your current business. And obviously through those configurations, you'll gain increased sell-through, increased efficiencies, and those KPIs will be set together. But it's all rooted in your business, and that's why we partner with Microsoft so that everything is in your tenant, it's your data, it doesn't get shared. It's really specific to your business, and that's why we have high levels of governance around that before we deploy the agent. The good news is we can deploy those agents in weeks. That's not a year implementation. That's a week's implementation.
And I'll ask kind of just a clarifying question, because this is, if we're talking about if we look at, a multi-brand global retailer, and, how does that decision-making from the customer usually go? Like, do they start with one brand, maybe one category, right? Like this brand, and let's start with apparel or leather goods or something like that. Like, how does that generally work?
Yeah, it's a great question. For a field trial, absolutely. So
Okay.
if we're doing an initial field trial, which we are very comfortable doing, a single category, a single brand is perfect, right? Once we've proven that out, we can scale very quickly, right?
Okay.
And those multi-brand organizations, we can scale from HQ level. We can do it at the brand level. We do want to get the level of comfort in change management so that organizations feel very comfortable with using agents. I think everybody's comfortable using ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. You have to feel comfortable doing that within your own data and within your own business. So that does take a little bit of time. That's why field trials are great. Once you've proven it, once you've shown the immediate value and then the long-term intrinsic value, then you can scale to all the brands and all the categories.
Okay.
All right. There was another question I think was somewhat answered on that first question that we answered. Yeah, just in terms of timing, right? Anywhere from as fast as 3 weeks to as long as maybe 12 weeks, depending on where your data sits. If your data sits in Azure and it's sitting in a lakehouse architecture, or in any of the hyperscalers or any of the lakehouse providers, we can move very fast. If it's sitting in a legacy system that was built by your IT team 25 years ago, with no access to export that data, it might take a little bit longer, but that's really where we rely on partners for. With that, I'm gonna close out the questions, and really I want to thank Kimberly for joining us. This was an incredible session, and thank you so much, and thank you for the partnership. Thanks, Noah. Noah didn't mention that he's in Hong Kong, and it's almost midnight where he is. So thank you for staying up late and looking like it's bright and early where you are. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach us on Intelo.ai. Certainly reach out to Kimberly and the Microsoft team. If you have questions, you can find all of us on LinkedIn. And we really look forward to the next session, which you'll hear from us soon on what the next session in our webinar series is. So have a great day, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you.